We go.
So we're here with Russ Ryan. Thank you, Russ, for joining us at the radio. Russ is a London-based digger and record collector, and he works at one of the most famous vinyl buy and sell platforms, Discogs. Russ, can you tell us a little bit about your professional journey until where you are now, and for how long have you been working for Discogs?
Yeah, of course. So, firstly, thank you for inviting me down. It's a nice thing to do on a Friday afternoon. I mean, I've been in this for a little while now. Like I started promoting and DJing when I was about 18, 19. Promoting hip-hop nights in Brighton where I went to university, and it was always going to be a loss leader. I think I broke even to the penny after promoting for like 3 years, and then from there I wanted to kind of go down the music business side. I DJ'd full-time for maybe 5 years, deep affection for the music, and wanted to find a way of working within that, so I started a record cleaner. So it's like a spray that you spray on records and clean them. It's called Near Mint, nearmint.co.uk. And we basically, from there, I got to working with Discogs. You know, I started record fairs in London. Discogs then backed them and sponsored them to a certain degree. We started working really well together, and it was at a time that, like, I was still DJing to pay rent and, you know, tried to balance my books. And there was a UK rep role at Discogs that came up that was part-time, and I was like, well, look, I can, alongside doing Near Mint, and I can lose some of my DJ gigs that I didn't want to be doing, and kind of go down that road. So one thing led to another. I started working with Discogs, and that was that. So yeah, it's been a really nice, like, organic journey through it. And yeah, and I feel very lucky to have, you know, to be now working alongside a company that, you know, regardless of whether or not I work for Discogs or not, I would still be spending the vast amount of my time on Discogs looking for records. So I feel very lucky in that respect.
Do you still work with the record cleaner, or?
Yeah. So Near Mint is still mine. So it now luckily runs itself. So I have a distribution team in the UK that sell it across Europe. But I still run record fairs in London. So we did prior to everything that's happened this year. And last year we actually moved it into a festival space. So we partnered with Giles Peterson's We Out Here festival, and we put a record fair into the festival, which I think is a festival first. So by day it was a 30-table record fair, and by night we cleared the tables away, and we had like a 250-person dance floor that kicked it until silly o'clock in the morning. So I still am very much involved in running record fairs and selling the cleaner as well in London, but, you know, at the same time it's as important me being out here and visiting, you know, record fairs and record spaces out here in different areas of Europe.
So your role as a European lead, what does it really entitle as your work?
No, yeah, of course, it's a fair question. So there's three of me globally. Okay, so there's three leads. One in my counterpart Chris, looking after the Americas. We have Hero over here in Tokyo. He looks after Australasia, and I'm over in Europe. Now we report into our commercial director Louis. And below us, we then have a team of representatives based in key cities within our region. So, for instance, I've got squad members in Barcelona, in Berlin, in Copenhagen, in Paris, and equally, Hero has a team over in South Korea. He has a team over in Australia. So, between us, we then have coverage of having people on the ground that are embedded within the scenes that are also doing this for the right reason. You know, we work alongside people that work within music as a labour of love. You know, my Spanish representative, he's one of the bookers at Primavera Sound. Cedric, he's like an amazing hip-hop producer that's been in the record game over there for years. Tia over in Copenhagen, she runs a female DJ booking agency. So we all very much, we're embedded within the scene, and do it because we love being within it, and having that collective of people that that love the music alongside understanding the business practice is a really good combination of making sure that we have traction in Europe. So that's kind of how it's set. And then obviously that's just my team, so that's just field marketing. So then we also have our customer support team, which you can imagine, handles a manner of all support issues when it comes to orders. We then have the product team, which is over in Portland, and partnerships as well, which is stateside. So the bulk of the company is over in Portland. Then we have a European division based in Amsterdam, and then with remote staff that are scattered across Europe, as I said, in those key cities, to make sure that we're out here understanding what's happening within the certain localized areas and working alongside people who are also doing things for the right reasons.
So most people work either remotely or in office?
So we have 2 office spaces, one in Portland and one in Amsterdam. But at the moment, obviously, with everything that's happening, the team has now gone 100% remote. And not saying that will be a forever change, but for the moment we are all home office based. And I think it's, to everyone, it's been a real change this year in how we work, but as a team we've demonstrated that we can work as well being totally remote. So I think it's been a real positive step for us as a business, and also because we're so spread out globally from Tokyo over to Portland over to Europe, it's actually brought the company closer together because we're having regular meetings and catch-ups, and it's very much centralized our global squad.
So besides having obviously a customer support team who handles all of these issues with damaged goods, delivery problems, unhappy customers and so on, do you also have like a content checking team that revises submissions, making sure everything is accurate? All the entries?
Good question. So the best way of putting this, I suppose, so Discogs ultimately is built on the contributions. We wouldn't be in this position without the users submitting records to the database, and that's something that we very much foster and really build on. We're a community first and a marketplace second. So to foster that growth, there's a couple of things that we do. We run an annual event called Spin, which encourages entries to the database, and then ultimately to make sure that entries are correct, we offer this thing called the Contributor Improvement Program. Now it's called CIP. It's a rather detailed part of the business, but it means that if someone were to enter a record incorrectly, like a spelling or a photo or whatever it might be, if that was picked up, they would be flagged against their accounts, and that user would then be asked to go back and correct the record before submitting more records. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that,
that's great. I wasn't aware of that.
No. No. And you know what? Before I started working at Discogs, nor was I. And I think that it's it's a way of us putting the control back to our community to making sure our marketplace is accurate. We don't want to be jumping in and correcting things on their behalf. Moreover, it's better to give the power back to the community to make those changes themselves. It's a really important balance for us. Discogs was started nearly 20 years ago, and for the first 5 or 6 years it was strictly a database. That's all it was, and the way that evolved was that members of the community started to trade records, and we felt as a company that needed managing to an extent. So, and whether that's with the submissions, whether that's also with looking after the customer support side of things, to making sure that customers are receiving records to the right quality that they are buying them at. It's a very important balance for us at the company to make sure we champion the community throughout.
So speaking of the 20 years of the platform, which is amazing, a long time, what do you think has changed the most in the whole process of submitting, buying, selling, searching?
It's a really good question. And look, the marketplace for music and the industry full stop has evolved so much over the last 2 decades that it's really heartwarming to see that records and physical purchases are still held in such high regard and are almost going through a real renaissance. So when we've evolved through those times, I mean, you look back at maybe like the early 2000s when record shops and the vinyl industry was going through a tough time. I think that the digital at that stage had really overtaken and was dominoing, and you saw record shops closing left, right and centre, and we very much saw a resurgence in the early 2010s, and it's kept on going towards that upward trajectory ever since. And I think that there's numerous factors behind that. I think you've got the popularity of music full stop within that time that has really drawn a line in the sand to encourage that growth. And off the back of that, you've got people at the very top who are playing records. You look at the likes of your everyone from your Giles Petersons through to your Moody Mans through to your Floating Points. They're playing records, at festivals and clublands across the country and across the globe. So someone that's young and that's getting into music at that stage, that's seeing OGs playing wax, I think is a really important catalyst of that sustained growth.
It's also a very almost sentimental thing. If you are a starting up DJ, you start collecting your records that start kind of defining your own identity as a professional.
For sure. I think everyone loves to hold something that's made by an artist that they love, whatever kind of form of art that comes in. And don't get me wrong, I think that the streaming of music is fantastic, and that in the last 10 years we've had so much more access to new artists that we would have otherwise not heard of, I think is incredible. But I think it's as important that if you love an artist, you want to own something of theirs. So I think it really defines, like you say, not only you as a collector or an artist, but it also it makes you want to invest within that love. And I think not to draw a very faint silver lining out of the situation the world's in at the moment, given the state that people have been indoors and that people have been reconnecting with physical media, no matter what that is, but people aren't necessarily needing that instant media on the fly, whether it's Spotify or Apple Music. No shots to Spotify or Apple Music, by the way. But people have reconnected with that physical forms, and we've seen a real uptick in usership in Discogs as a result. So I think that there's a multitude of reasons as to why we've seen that growth and sustained growth, and look, I think that the industry is poised in a very I suppose positive position to continue that for the next decades, especially when you look at young record labels that everyone's putting out wax. It's a standard procedure, and I think that for me is the undertone of the of what we see on the horizon when it comes to the sustained growth of what we're all about.
Do you think the current pandemic situation that we're living also fueled a little bit the growth of sales in records?
I mean, look, it's no secret that the first half of this year that Discogs usership was up 30% on last year.
30% on sales?
30% on usership and on sales. So it's we're seeing not only people spending money on records again and recollecting and filling in the gaps in the record collections that they didn't necessarily have, but we're also seeing people adding to their collections and building their wants lists and building and submitting records to our database. So it's not just the sales that we're seeing a real spike in, but it's a total increase of the usage of the platform.
More digging, for example, more submissions.
Exactly. People have got time to, we've all been there at 2 a.m. when you're going down a rabbit hole of finding out which, keys player was playing on a certain jazz album, and you go down to see what else they've done. People have got the time to do that now, and I think as a result are getting, far more honed into what they're doing, and we're seeing a spike in traffic as a result at the moment. So we have 450 million page views per month on Discogs. We have 8 million active users, And as it stands at the moment, we're seeing around 20,000 new users sign up each week.
Wow.
So, it's really skyrocketing as it stands, and this is from the last time I checked, but it's the second most popular website in the world for music. And the heart warmer here, and it's important to double down on, is that we're independent. We're not corporation owned. We never have. We never will be. We actually on Tuesday set out a vision as to where we wanted to be in the future, and it's really heartwarming to see that same passion from our owners that started the business to want to take it forward on an independent platform. So I know that there's been, as I think there is with any large company, there's been rumours going around on our forums in terms of potential buyers and takeovers and which way it's going. So I think it's important to double down on that we are independent, and that is the way that we are moving, and it's really heartwarming to be a part of that movement.
That was related to that, one of my last questions to finish our talk, which is considering the new sustainability challenges and new marketing tendencies. What are the future plans of the platform in terms of growing?
Yeah. Really good question. So look, I think what we've done in the past and what we're looking to do in the future is very much focusing on what we're good at and do more of that. So years ago, and I'm sure many of your listeners would know, we branched out into other websites. So we started Posterogs and Bookogs and Gearogs, which were branches of Discogs which mapped out the history of those media forms and equipment. But I think what we've realised in time is that we've got the central usership of the biggest music database on the platform, and it's how we best use that to service the music lover and everyone. That's really what we want to do. We want to make this data available to anyone that needs it, and to be able to service everyone that loves music as much as we do. So in the short term, what we are really here to do is to drive people as well as into our community, is also to drive usage of people into record shops. We started up a website called the Vinyl Hub, which documents every record shop in the world.
That's great.
That is part of the app that you can download, so when you're about, you can see what record shops are near you, you can see what time they open.
Oh, that's a good idea.
In a way that we see record shops as very much the hub of our community, and we want to champion that as much as possible. So what we really want to do with Discogs is to encourage people's usage of the platform, but we don't certainly want to take a monopoly on music. I get a lot of questions on a daily basis as to why aren't we doing a radio station, and why aren't we doing a record label, and I think it's really important to centre in on the fact that we're a platform for a community. And it's really important for us to strengthen the community where we can, given our assets, and not come into places and try and make big statements, monopolistic movements within those territories, whereas we actually want to support people that are doing things for the right reasons within those right territories. So we back and partner, or did do prior to lockdown, with events, and we find record fair owners and we work alongside them to make their events better. We champion record labels and people that are doing things for the right reasons, focusing on record collectors and people that don't necessarily get the shine that they deserve, and use our spotlight to really champion those that sometimes go unsung, which I think is important. And as far as an organisation's perspective and the way that we, I suppose, hope to grow, it's simply doing more of the same and encouraging that same growth that we've seen over the last 2 decades. So, as I'm sure many of your listeners know, the usership of Discogs can seem to a new user rather interesting in the way it works, and that's simply because the structure has remained very much the same for the last 20 years, with added bonuses and features of how it works. Now, what we're doing at the moment, and it's, I'm sure, important to touch on this topic, but we're trying to modernise that usership for a 2020 marketplace standard. So a big job of what I'm doing at the moment is moving a lot of our sellers across from a manual shipping terms over to a automatic and standardized shipping terms. Now what that means is, once upon a time at Discogs, what you were able to do is that if you bought a record, you would then wait for an invoice to be sent to you, and you would pay the invoice, and then the record would be sent to you. So it was like a double tier communication. And as we all know at the moment, you know, when you buy something online in 2020, you pay for it there and then.
Immediately, yeah.
So the first step in the modernisation of the marketplace is what we're doing is we're encouraging everyone to move across to that automatic payment method. And from there on, it gives us a really good potential to, again, continue to elevate the standard of where Discogs should be, and is in many senses. But we're conscious as a company that we don't want to rest on our laurels with this exponential growth that we're seeing within the market. Moreover, we want to reinvest that growth and that into ways of making our marketplace more sustainable for the next 20 years. Whilst sticking true to our core values of servicing the music fan in everyone. That's really what we're here. I think everyone that works there is a music nerd, like first and foremost. That's the reason that we got into it, and that goes right the way through to everyone in the squad, right through to leadership. That's really the heart of the business, and it's continuing to make sure that we remain sustainable for the next 20 years. And whilst, remaining ultimately an open source, an open platform, free database that is accessible to anyone that wants to know anything about music. And I think that's really important, and a real asset, not only to music, but to the internet.
Yeah. Sure,
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Russ. That was a great talk.
Pleasure. No, anytime. So just whilst I'm kind of, I suppose, to firm over what I'm doing over in Lisbon, is that I'm writing at the moment a guide to record shopping out here, which is going to champion each independent record shop. That will become available as soon as at a time that we can encourage people to come back into record shops, but it's very much something that we're out here doing, and it's such a fantastic culture and a real diverse musical soundscape that is over here. It's fascinating. So it's somewhere that I've wanted to come for as soon as I started to do this reach out work. So and I've been amazed at the records that I've found. So
don't forget to buy records, people.
It's important.
Support your local store.
But once that lands, that will of course be available via Discogs, via the blog and via the website.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.